Your brain is constantly asking this question throughout your whole life. Who am I? You can be defined by your life experiences, by your achievements, by your job. But ultimately, I think it's one of life's greatest pursuits, and I think that's what we're gonna be talking about today. Welcome to It's the Good Life. I'm Josh. This is Anthony and David, and we are going to be talking about identity today. Just want to kind of have an opening thought. I know we've talked about this a lot throughout basically the first and second season.
Mm.
But why does identity feel unstable after college? I know it might seem like an obvious answer,
Mm.
but I feel like it's just because like you established yourself for 12 plus years as a
Mm.
student, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden when you leave, as we've talked about in that college episode, you leave that sort of routine, all of a sudden your what you think your identity is no longer there, because
Mm.
you associate it so strongly with being a student.
Yeah.
But what was that? Was that for you guys struggle with that, like an identity shift, or was that pretty straightforward transition going from like I'm a college student to what am I now?
Yeah, I think it's still definitely something that every student that transitions into an adult after college figures out, and is
Mm,
going through every single day to get a better understanding of what that exactly is. Like, who am I? What makes up my identity? What are the
mm,
things that are a part of the life that I'm walking in? And do I enjoy these things?
mm,
Hobbies, interests, they all make up a really big part of your identity.
mm,
And so one of the things that I was thinking of is it's probably a big factor of going through the routine of just those many years back to back, whether it's waking up really early, going to classes,
mm,
learning, getting all of these lectures, all of these notes, and, whether you're on the medical field, taking
yeah,
clinicals, going
yeah,
out to all these labs, it's like
Mm.
you have this structure built into your life.
mm-hmm,
And then when you leave college or when you leave school, or for example, you don't go to college, but you're out of high school, you grew up in, the education system your entire life. It's like
mm-hmm,
the structure there now is gone, and
mm,
you don't have that structure anymore. So I think that that ties into why there's a big feeling of
a
I'm
shift.
lost, or
Mm,
who
Yeah.
am I
mm,
exactly, like right out of school,
mm,
you know.
Yeah.
But
I,
yeah.
I agree. I think to build off that, I think there's some of like there's the lack of structure, but then some people I think that's actually really good because that gives them the freedom to kind of try new things and explore different avenues in life
mm-hmm,
and find maybe areas or facets of their identity that they didn't know about before.
mm-hmm,
But at the same time, I think it's also one of those things that can cause analysis paralysis. Like you have too many
mm,
options,
Mm.
what do you do? Or maybe you're in the case where obviously like you're trying to find a job and you can't,
right,
and then it's kind of like, okay, well, I don't really have a direction now. Like,
Mm.
do I have to find a new one?
mm,
Do I pivot or do I keep walking on this road that is leading me to an uncertain destination?
right.
I think
Right.
in some ways.
No, it makes me really think about like what do we hold in our life as a part of who we are, like, and what you guys were talking about a lot of is like experiences, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, the routine of going to classes, or the
Mm.
routine of going to clinical, or the routine of working out, like, or
Yeah.
even geographically, like, oh, I'm a Californian,
Mm.
like, oh, I'm an APU student, like, oh, what do you do? I'm an APU student. Like, that's your identity, that's how you
Yeah.
introduce yourself, right?
Mm.
Mm.
But I think one of the things I want to challenge everyone who's listening and ourselves here as we're talking about this topic is like, what are the deeper things by which we are like the deeper things that we identify ourselves through? So
Mm.
like faith is another thing, right? Like if someone says, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a Christian."
Mhm.
Like that would also be appropriate.
Yeah.
But which one is more important? I'm an APU student
Mm.
or I'm a Christian. Does it matter which one's more important? Can you be both at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's an interesting question because I feel like I had a conversation with actually someone else a while back, and we were talking about just the way different countries have conversations. And one of those things was like in America, we ask, like when we ask someone, like when we introduce ourselves, we typically ask them like, "What do you do? What do you do?"
mhm,
Like what's work for you, how's work, right? But then they're saying like in Europe and other countries outside of America, they ask like, what do you do for fun?
oh, that's interesting.
But I think it also gives you this like view of how, like what we also value in society here is like obviously there's more value in like your job, like how much you make, or you know, all this stuff. There's more of the focus rather than like maybe what is your interest outside of work, because maybe work isn't your entire life and it shouldn't be, right? Like there, it poses kind of the challenge against you.
Yeah,
Wait, that's a really interesting point.
I like that question a lot. You know, it begs the thought of like, what's so important about like your identity makeup? Is it this one focus of work, or is it the areas that you are enjoying life, whether it's interest or hobby? And I think it's definitely a worthy question to ask yourself about identity. And the reason being is because the more that you understand, you know, what makes up this person, like who you are, the more you can clearly achieve the goals that have been established, the more that you can actually establish goals for one. And I think there's better direction, there's more purpose, you know, for your own individual life, because you have an understanding of this identity that you carry, that you have. And you know, it's crazy because I was actually having a really good conversation with one of my very close friends this past week, and he's been going through a lot of struggle, a lot of adversity of like whether that be like college applications or you know, trying to secure a sense of job, so that he can sustain living with the potential of living with, you know, certain guys for roommates, right? And making this whole housing situation work. And I really do appreciate him trying to be as vulnerable as possible. But one thing that I found that was such a big struggle was he wasn't able to really lock down the understanding of himself and what exactly it is that he wants in his life. And therefore, I think there's almost like this unstable identity that's kind of thrashing back and forth of like, you do dabble in volleyball, but you also don't necessarily know why you enjoy volleyball. Is it because of the community? Is it because it challenges you to be better physically? Is it because the mental effort? Like, I think these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves when it's around the topic and concept of what identity is. You know, what makes up who you are. And that's just definitely one aspect of how to look at identity, right? Like identity can be so many factors and formations of many things. But I think it's a worthy question to ask for sure.
It is interesting that you say that he struggled with being able to define who he was, right? And it's interesting because I think that it's so easy for us to be like, oh, I'm a nurse, or oh, I'm an AP student, like the superficial stuff.
Right.
But to really like dig deeper and think, well, why am I an AP student? Or why am I a nurse? You know, like it goes beyond just your like the superficial identity. It's like, oh, what are the roots of why I'm this person? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, even to get a little bit more granular and personal, I think the question about like what, because we're asking like what identity is, but then I think also from what David said, this idea, and I was jotting it down here, it's kind of like, oftentimes I think in life there's different times where we want different things. Right? And like depending on what we want in that time of life, like that changes what we pursue. Right? So like I think the question, I mean, I would pose towards you, Josh, too, is like in this current moment in your life, like I see you pursuing career.
Ironic.
I see you pursuing nursing, right? Schooling, career, whatever that is. But for myself, like it's different. Like I'm maybe pursuing finances, like building up a good financial base, or trying to build up a name for myself through content, or I'm trying to find fulfillment or purpose in doing something, even though I might not know what it is. I'm trying to figure that out through trying. Right. And then maybe for David, it's like, you know, job hunts or something, whatever it is that you're doing. Right. Like, so it's like, but then I also can see so clearly that depending on what it is, like school's your priority, like I see you hammering that in your schedule, like the things you're doing in that time period is very much aligned with the thing that you're after of what you want. So I'm curious, like, to ask you, like, I would assume it's okay for what you want to change in life. So how do you go about adjusting what you're pursuing in light of what you want?
Ooh. I don't know why, but that made me think about like the way that we.
Does that kind of make sense?
It does. No, it totally does. Like the way that we define who we are as children, right?
Uh-huh.
Of like, oh, I want to be a good student.
Mm.
And it's like that goal of like I'm not that currently, but that's what I want to be,
Mm.
like helps determine what your actions are going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or if you're in high school, right? Like, you're in high school, I want to get into nursing school. That determines, oh, I got to get good grades. I got to volunteer in hospitals. Like, you start doing things in the sort of the the effort of becoming that thing, becoming that identity, right?
Mm.
I think that the challenge with that is what about who you are in that moment? And like that's kind of like the thing that I've wrestled with throughout nursing school, right? It's like I've wanted to be a nurse since I was in 4th grade.
Right.
It's not a new thing that I've wanted to pursue that identity of being a nurse. But I think that my pathway, I've come into so many barriers in my life that has basically said you can't be a nurse yet, or you can't be a nurse now. And so it's like it there were like when I just got out of high school, I applied to every nursing school in Southern California and I got into none of them. You know, so would it make sense for me to be like, well, nursing is no longer something I can pursue as an identity?
Yeah.
That's a valid response because
Right.
like that door has closed, right? But I think the great thing about life is that like doors are not continuously closed.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I 4 years later, 3 years later, the door opened where I can now pursue this again. You know, but who knows? I might not pass my boards and be in the same situation as I was before.
Yeah.
But all that to
Right.
say, to answer your questions, like I think barriers in life are expected, right? Like challenges in life are expected,
Yeah.
especially when we're trying to become that thing, you know, whatever that might be.
Right.
But I think like in my experiences of pursuing becoming a nurse and encountering different barriers, I've learned how to develop who I am along the way.
Yeah.
Less so than expecting myself to be complete like the moment I land there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my identity is forming in process
Yes.
as I'm on my way.
Yes.
Less so than I graduate, I get my license. Now I'm perfect. Now I'm the person I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure David got
That's
2
a
cents
huge.
on this.
That's
Yeah.
a huge. It's a huge thing. I mean, the point. What is a huge thing? I'm saying there's a big emphasis. Going back to that conversation that I had with this friend this past week
Yeah.
that has been struggling with,
Mhm.
you know, his college applications, whatnot. It was just a. It was a really grand aspect of his world to see that, you know, the way that whatever decision that college had for him was not necessarily ultimately everything that he was looking for. But I told him I think it's something powerful to look at it in the lens that maybe this sense of perhaps God not allowing you to have it the way that you've wanted it always is a redirection into a new place or a new path that allows you to get to ultimately where you truly desire
Or maybe where you're actually supposed to
or
be.
where you're supposed to
Right.
be.
Right.
And I love that.
Ooh, that's interesting.
To also add on to that with the whole focus that we were talking about, the grounding of I think our identity, I don't think it necessarily should be boxed into this like
I agree.
this thing, and this thing can be there can be many things. I think stereotypes is one of them. I think a stage of development in your life can be one of them. Are you a parent? Oh, then that must mean you have kids. Not necessarily. Are you a student? Oh, that must mean you're 21. No, you could be 50 and a student.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Good point. Yeah.
when we look at identity, I think it's worth considering and being so thoughtful of all of these different considerations that allow us to understand that identity is made up of a multitude of things that can fit into, we'll just say like this box, but not allow that box to be exclusive and justify everything that is to fit within it.
Yeah.
That's to be like that specific label, right?
Yeah.
There's many things that can feed into this box, but if you look at the box within itself, I don't think it can be so healthy to kind of just assume almost that like everything fits in this
Right.
because that's the label of the
Yeah.
box. Yeah.
I got a lot.
I mean, there's a lot there.
That's great.
Thank you.
There was a
That's
lot
great,
with
man.
what you said, with what you said, Josh, too. Was I think something that stuck out to me though with what David said was like it wasn't what I was looking for. Like when you said that, when you said your friend said that, I think it's it's so common, I think, for us to say that, I think, often enough. But then I think about in terms of like what a good story entails of like someone going through a pain, right? And then they're pursuing the change and then there's a payout at the end of it. I think sometimes in 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 our life, like when we go through things, we get to the end of it and we're like, oh, it wasn't what I was looking for. Like the payout wasn't there.
Yeah.
But then I think the question I always ask myself at the end of that is like, okay, so what? Like, what are we doing next?
Yeah.
And I think I found in my life, like what I learned from trial and error is like you just kind of you wouldn't have known unless you tried.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have known, you know, maybe psychology wasn't the thing if you didn't go for it. Like I wouldn't have known, you know, how nursing was until I like actually started working as one. You know, there's no way that you could have done that or really experienced it in entirety, even though you go to clinicals and whatnot. Being a nurse is completely different than it was going to clinicals. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
And kind of like wrapping my head around that experience and then wrapping my head around like the whole idea of changing, like identity changes throughout different interests, because we're such different people. Like the start of last year, I was really into plants, and then I got, you know, into like music for a little bit, and then I got into and then we started the podcast at some point, and then, you know, went back into bodybuilding. Like there's so many different evolving interests in life, and like that's cool because we're all such different people. But I think at the same time, it's like, how do we cope with the fact that every time we switch interests, like we're kind of almost changing who we are in some ways, in small ways or in bigger ways. And it's like this identity that we're rooted in. It's like what I feel like there's also this core, like what are the things that stay the same, and then what are things that change kind of in light of that.
Yeah.
I have so much to say.
Well,
So I think that's such a great like question to pose, is like, who are we? Are we like the accumulation of our experiences, or are we like basically like a color change? Like every time we go into a new experience, we change into a new color. I like to think that the person that you are, and I think the person that I am aimed to be, is less so of like I'm red, then I'm blue, then I'm yellow, then I'm orange, but more of like those. Have you seen those like quilts with like multiple pieces of different fabrics like woven into it?
yeah.
Right? I feel like that's a lot more of like what our identity looks like. And sometimes there are parts of our lives that don't really match well with other parts, but it's still all you, right? Like you have a good chunk of the quilt that's dedicated to bodybuilding. You have a good chunk dedicated to nursing, but you also have a small chunk dedicated to being a planter and a small chunk dedicated to being a family person. You know what I mean? And it's like, if I look, I can see the individual parts of your story. Like I could say the same thing for you, right? Like, but if I take a step back, that's all who Anthony is.
Right.
You're not just one or the other. You're an accumulation of all the different experiences, right? So if I asked you who is Anthony, who is David, you wouldn't just say I'm a nurse. You would say I'm a nurse. I love plants. I love to bodybuild. I love to boulder. I love like. They're all you, you know.
Yeah.
But like David was saying, I think this is also something else too. Is like, I think identity is a two-way street, right? You yourself have to like choose how you define who you are, but in the same way, just like you can limit who you are, you can also limit who other people are, right? So like if I looked at you and you said you're a nurse, I'm like, oh, so you're only this. You only fit in this box of attributes. You're probably organized. You're probably well off. You're probably, you know, got a good career ahead of you. That's it.
Yeah.
But if I didn't learn anything else about you, that's really all I can do. But I do think that being able to learn about who you are, it requires effort and intentionality to be like, so you're a nurse, what else do you like to do in your free time?
Yeah.
Oh, I like to bowl. Wow, that like opens a whole new realm of you know, who you are, right?
Yeah.
Do you, I guess this is a question for both of you guys, like kind of thinking about that two-way street. I think the first question I would ask is like, do you guys feel like there's been any points in your life, either recently or in the past, when you have limited the potential of who you can become, and how did that affect the way you went about life? I can certainly say it has for me. I've done that before for myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Could you reiterate the second part of the question? I got the first part.
Yeah. So like how would that sort of limiter that you put on the potential of who you could become
Mm.
affect the way you go about life. So, like, for
Mm.
example, I didn't really believe I could amount to anything in middle school.
Mm.
And so as a result, I didn't try in anything.
Mm.
I didn't try in my grades. I didn't try in sports. I didn't try out for anything because I was like, well, I suck at everything. So why should I amount to identify as anything beyond this?
I
know what I
like
mean?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. I think gotta sit in that
I,
real quick.
I think for me, like, I have a pretty big example that comes to mind. Like when I was in middle school, I was probably like the most quiet kid in class. Like,
Mm.
believe it or not, I was just like socially awkward. Still socially awkward, but
I don't
Not
think so.
true.
False
I've come
news.
along. I've come a long way. You know, I'm still got a lot of work to do. But you know, I didn't talk to anyone. Like I was on my phone a lot. I played a lot of games. Nothing against that, but I had a certain identity that I was fixated on,
Mhm.
and I think this is what I would, looking back, would call a fixed mindset, as opposed to a growth mindset.
Mm.
And I think this ties into identity so closely because had I not let go of that fixed mindset, I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
Mm.
Like, it was only because I was willing to change who I was that I was able to become who I am
Mm.
and move away from who I was. Not that that person is no longer who I am, because I'll always, like, your past is always your past. It's never going to change.
Right.
And that'll always be a part of you. But I can look back and say, like, there was a point in time distinctly that's when I was a shy guy. And then I see this transition and change where I did something about it and and it made a change.
Mm.
But I think going back to your point, I think in terms of identity changes and in light of the whole conversation, I feel like the one thing that for me has stayed the same actually, more or less, is the willingness to just try. Like
Mhm.
try new things.
Oh, that's very you.
And I think that's a theme that continues to come about in my life. I realize I see it like again and again. No matter what it is that I do, it's just like try, and if you fail, try it again.
Right.
Mhm. Or
And
try something else.
I think and I think
Yeah.
like that's totally, I feel like, my life mantra up to this point. I realize it's all about just trying.
Mm.
And there's points when I realize like, oh, this isn't what I was looking for, like we just said. And it's like, that's when I pivoted.
Mm.
And there's other times where I'm like, man, this is great. This is exactly what I was looking for. I'm going to double down on it. Right? Like, but then I feel like I wouldn't have understood that had I not dared to try. So that's my call to action, is like, dare to try that thing that you
Yeah.
want to do, because how do you know? I mean, within the means of, like, you know,
Yeah.
don't hurt yourself
What's
or whatever.
realistic and reasonable.
But yeah. Obviously there's caveats
Yeah.
and nuance in that. Like,
Yeah.
don't try, you know, jumping off a bridge or something.
So you're telling me to go.
Yeah, but
You're
you
gonna run a
know,
marathon right now.
be smart. But yeah, like going back to the point, like, I think identity does change in some ways, but then there's like this root inside of you that, like, deep down inside, like your core value, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stays very much like true.
Yeah.
And you know,
Wow, that's very powerful.
Yeah. What about you, David?
There's something about what you were saying, Anthony, where it's like you said your past doesn't change, and the thing that hit me was me filling in the blank now is like, okay, but you then now have the power to change your present, which allows you to fix or alter or
Progress.
give you a different future.
exactly.
Right, and that future will be what you'll be living in that present time,
Hmm.
and you'll be looking now here at this moment of the present as your past, which you already working on the change. And it's like, if you think about that, how change works, how time works within that change, like, it's a beautiful, like, it's a nuanced thing that you were saying. Like, there's many ways that you can take the complexity of something to build. And for me, as a person that goes through many psychological challenges and developments, I challenge myself mentally, whether that's like, you know, doing logic puzzles or doing Sudoku, or, you know, searching up very high, you know, vocabulary terms and then understanding the definition and the use of these words. I mean, those are all things that make me a better person when it comes to navigating the things that I need in my identity, where that's like as a writer, or, you know, wanting to become perhaps an author one day, you know, things like that. And I think it's a really important thing to ask myself, like, of those things, like what am I willing to change now in the present so that
Mm.
I can actually set myself up for a future
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
allows for everything that I'm asking for in this identity.
Yeah.
But that's a really important question.
And that's really cool. Just understanding also your, for maybe the viewers that don't know, like your backstory,
yeah.
and some of like understanding the why behind the pursuit.
Mm.
Like from the outside, I think someone can see that you're doing this and you're trying to challenge yourself mentally, physically,
Mm.
but then understanding, like as like myself, understanding kind of like why you do that,
Mm.
and like understanding your past and how your story ties into that pursuit of
Mm.
whatever it is that you're trying to go after. I think that makes it very meaningful, for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool to see that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So many good thoughts going around over here.
Oh, trust me, I got 5,000 more in my back pocket.
Well, actually, for you, Josh, like
Yeah,
I think kind of to pivot the conversation,
sure.
something that we haven't really talked about is the challenge of the identity. And I think like,
I was about to get into
and
that, bro.
I'm curious to ask, I guess, to pose the question towards you now, kind of turn the table around.
Yeah.
When have there been moments where your identity has been challenged, and how did you go about either resolving that or maybe not resolving that and just struggling in the challenge of the identity? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
I guess identity crisis.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's essentially what you were describing.
Take it how you will. Yeah.
I think that this kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Where I was like, not necessarily being a devil's advocate against experiences being a part of like defining who we are, but I do think inevitably, for better or for worse, like sometimes life's experiences are so influential that they just fuse as a part of our identity, right? So like when I got divorced, like that became part of who I am,
Yeah.
whether I like it or not, like and I think that that's something that has definitely played a big part in my identity now, right? But I think that there were a lot of, like as I'm sure the viewers may or may not know, when I was going through like, depression, like really severe depression, like that was something where life was happening and life was really difficult and emotionally difficult, and I was very unmotivated. And for years, that was my identity. I'm just the person who's unmotivated, who doesn't have the ability to do anything, be successful in grades. I can't do sports. Like I couldn't do anything,
Yeah.
right? And interestingly, like I think that it wasn't until I was a freshman in high school that one of my high school teachers challenged me and said, like, where's your end goal with this? Like, what do you hope to gain or lose by continuing to feel this way and like exist in this mentality, right? And I realized like I'm gaining nothing and will continue to gain nothing by being that person, right?
Yeah.
And so that was like an experience that my identity, the negative identity, frankly, in a sense, was challenged, right? But then I would say the opposite is also true, right? Like in this experience of getting divorced, right? Is like, I had in my mind like a stable life financially, occupationally, relationally, familially, like everything was consistent. But then this great sort of chasm happens, and all of a sudden this negative experience sort of challenges this identity. I was like, oh, I've been a boyfriend, a fiance, a husband for years, and now I'm no longer that. Who am I now if I wasn't, if everything of who I was encapsulated by the identity, right? But looking back at it now, it's been quite a while since that happened. I've realized that there was so much more of my identity that I either suppressed or wasn't willing to look at, that was still there, and maybe that goes back to what David was talking about of like the potential, right? Like the potential of who I could be was still there in the midst of that entire life and season of time. But it just wasn't there. So one thing that my mom said that was very interesting was, I feel like the old Josh is back, which was very interesting to say, because I was like, well, which Josh was there for the 7 or so years
Right.
recently.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm,
so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
that's great. Yeah.
But I think that's
I
kind
think
of
I think something that I also I think my takeaway from that is like what you talked about also makes me realize like a key component of who you are, of your identity, is actually value,
Mm.
like
Ooh.
what you value,
Ooh,
or
that's
maybe
interesting.
like who you value or the things you value,
That's an
Mm.
interesting point.
or what you put your value in,
Mhm.
because if you're in a relationship and your value is all in that relationship, and you're defining yourself as a boyfriend, a husband,
Right.
a fiance,
Like, and that's it.
and then you guys divorce.
It's like,
Oh snap, you're
Mhm.
no longer a fiance, you're no longer a boyfriend, you're no longer a husband. What are you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Who
And
are you?
that's where your value is challenged, because
Right.
the things you once held value in
Right.
are no longer there.
Mm.
And so now you're forced to find value in something else,
Mm.
or accept the fact that you have no value.
Yeah.
And I think that's often the case where like breakups, like divorces, are so tough, because then you resort to that
You have to
ladder.
face that.
Yeah.
Ladder
Yeah.
result of like,
Totally.
I have no value now because all my value was initially
Ooh,
put in that person
Right.
that's
or
a
that
good one.
relationship
Yeah.
That's a
or
good
whatever that is that you're in. Like, and obviously, like every episode, we do find some way to bring it back, I think, to faith.
Yeah.
And I think my plug here is
Give the plug.
like value, in what you believe in. Like
Yeah.
I don't even have to go granular, but like value in whether it's faith or whether it's a certain belief that you hold, a truth,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like those things, I feel like you have to know, like the certain things in life have to be uncompromisable. Like
Mm.
I'm not willing to give that up for anyone, because
Yeah.
that's so true to me.
Yeah.
Value. I
Yeah.
think it's such a big part of identity.
Not to provide some comedic relief, but that was giving like Vin Diesel energy from Fast and Furious.
Oh man.
Like nothing, nothing beats family.
Oh
You
man.
know.
Yes.
But to your point, like that's such a beautiful
Yeah.
picture of like if everything else is fallible in this world that you can put value in,
Yeah.
why pass? How do I put this? Like why like set a standard for anything that will fail if like God is the ultimate standard that will not fail you, that you can always have value in, and that you can always trust that your identity is fulfilled in. You
Yeah.
know?
Do you know that you guys know the song Firm Foundation?
Oh,
Oh yeah. Come
dude,
on
I sing
now.
that in
That-
Sunday. I
Come on
love
now.
that one.
That's the song that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, basically, it's if you have a strong foundation, it doesn't matter what happens in your life. You always
Yeah.
have that as something to fall back on.
Right.
And to be clear, that firm foundation of Christ, your rock, right?
Mhm.
Not Christ, the sand. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like the anchor, right? Like right where it's like the anchor is like, we got something
Uh-huh.
cooking here.
Oh, okay.
I was like,
Okay.
if you catch it early, we can stop the video soon. That's what my pastor used to say.
Oh man.
But like, yeah, like the anchor, right?
Right.
Like, if you're in a storm where your identity is challenged, but your identity is rooted in the foundation of Christ, then no storm can weather that identity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got divorced, but I know Jesus still loves me.
Yeah.
I know I'm a child of God.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
my mom died, but I know I'm still loved.
Right.
You know, there was a patient that I was working with, and she was just talking to me about her life, and out of nowhere she's like, yeah, my son was murdered last month. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like that just was shocking, right? It was a really shocking statement that she said, but what she said afterward struck me even more. She said, but I know that he's with the Lord now. And I was like, wow. Like, and she's like, I have so much faith that he's exactly where he's supposed to be. And yes, it was an awful thing, but I know that God is still there for me. Jesus still loves me. Jesus still loves him. And Jesus even loves the person who murdered him. Like, talk about unshaken. She said it with no hesitation. Just like went right through it. You know?
Yeah.
Do you feel like, David,
Crazy
like,
love.
do you feel like that there's been experiences in your life where your faith has carried you through an experience where your identity was challenged?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Do you have like an example of a story?
Um, yeah, there's one instance along many other instances that
Mhm.
were um, like near death experiences, right? And similar to like what we're talking about,
Oh, shoot.
they were not
Are we thinking about
bouldering.
the same
They were
one?
free soloing. No,
Oh,
I can't say
no, I'm
anything
thinking about
to
a
that
specific.
yet. But they were related more to the like relational dynamic of like family and whatnot, and that's why I still to this day I have a very difficult time, but there's still a lot of work being done that the Lord has been working on, and I've seen so much healing, right? But of those instances, I've always thought, okay, well then if you can't take it, David, then you just might be like a weakling, or you might just be someone who can't hack it because this is just too difficult for you. And you know, you start to beat yourself up over that, and your identity starts to get formed where it's like, yeah, you're gonna never amount to anything, like you said, right? Something that you were challenged in your identity.
Right.
But I think when I looked at that difficulty of asking myself, like, what's going on here with your life? Like, is this who you are actually ought to be, or sought out to be? And I think what Anthony brought, at least that gave me solace, that I absolutely want to affirm for all others and the audience, is when you have your foundation set on the rock of Christ, every single thing that you go through in your life, when you're hit, uppercut, left hook, whatever it is, jabbed in the face, poked in the eyeballs, hit in the genitals, whatever it is.
Oh, man.
You know, this is an analogy, right?
Some dirty fighting.
Whatever,
there.
yeah, some dirty fighters. You know, you're playing water polo and they're just
Life-
kicking you under the water.
life doing
You know
you
what I'm saying?
dirty.
You know, you can understand that.
Yeah.
But the point is, are you going to be shaken to where you give in to that and allow that to define your life? Or are you going to give the value that it deserves and say, this is a part of my life, and continue to keep moving forward and building the identity that Christ may be allowing you to walk on and see? You know, maybe that means you're going to be a more stronger, person who takes more initiative, of a leader, and a person who's more open-minded and strong at heart. And that might mean you might be difficult to deal with, but now you're taking more control and impact and influence of your life because you believe in the power that Christ has given you, because you're founded.
Yeah.
And so I think about that all the time of just the many instances where I've been challenged to doubt, like, what exactly is your identity, you know? And I think one thing that's worth looking into from a psychological perspective is understanding the difference between identity versus role confusion.
Oh yeah,
And
Erickson's.
it's right,
Yeah.
Erickson's developmental stages, and it's something to think worth looking into, researching, thinking about. I mean, I can't give the whole spiel, but I mean, general concept is thrown out there. Look into it. I think it'll help anyone who is going just through the very vagueness of what identity is understand what are some healthy precautions or some steps towards gaining a better self of their identity, and like what can be the next steps to reclaiming what is something that's yours, whether that's a hobby, an interest, whether that's the value of being a father or a husband or a boyfriend, whether that is you going to school as a student, and no matter what stage in life, because these stages are of the development through the ages that Erickson gives. But the thing is, you can be an adolescent up until the age of 36.
Yeah.
You know, you can still carry that mindset. You have people who are still living in their mother's basement, and there's nothing, I'm not going to say entirely wrong with that, but there is something that might be going on a mental, cognitive level that needs addressing, that needs help, right? And so when we look at identity, perhaps maybe a person who still lives with their mother who is 36 believes that they are a person that's a child that needs to be coddled, that still can be independent, still can cook for themselves, but they need the help and the assistance of their parents still. And, you know, I'm not going to say, once again, that's entirely wrong, but it's worth thinking about and asking ourselves that question,
Yeah.
right? Because you can also be a 14-year-old who's doing your parents' taxes.
Yeah.
You know, who knows?
Yeah.
We're all handed, I feel like, such different cards, and thank you for sharing that, David.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate. We're all handed such different cards at the beginning of life, but I feel also like how we play those cards
Yeah.
is so drastically different from one life to the next.
Yeah. Right.
And if you're using this analogy, if the game is called life, like how do we win? What are the rules? Well,
Yeah.
some people choose to live, by the rules of others, and others, I think we choose to define the rules ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to I think as we kind of round off
Mm-hmm.
the episode pretty soon
Mhm.
about identity, I feel like it's so also important to know. I think one big question that I really struggled with, I think I still do, and people I think in their midlife also do, is like who who am I? Like the root of the question is who am I? But also looking at your past of who you were, has that does that past version of you bring you like fulfillment and joy?
Mm.
Or do you feel like you look back and you waste it? Because I think that's like a lot of times what midlife crisis is like you look back, or even early life crisis, like people that are younger and feeling this too. It's like,
Mm.
I feel like I wasted my time. Like I see these videos all the time. It's like I'm 30 and I'm still living in my mother's basement and I don't have a full-time job. I have no retirement savings. Um, and they look back and they're like,
Yeah.
where did that time go?
Yeah.
And I think that as someone who's in their 20s, like I look at that and I'm like, well, there's something I feel like I can learn there.
Yeah.
I don't want to make those same mistakes.
Yeah.
But I don't know, how is it that you guys approach in terms of looking back at your identity and kind of assessing whether or not you're like fulfilled with that, you know? Is that something that you guys often look back and you're like, wow, I'm really excited about how much I'm like happy about how much I've achieved. I look
Mhm.
back and, that brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, I think you've hit it right on the spot. I think those are all the questions that we need to ask is like, when we look at our life, at least in the past, is like, is this something that's enjoyable for me to be replayed in my mind? Like,
Yeah.
did I actually appreciate the difficult tasks that I've accomplished? Um, and I think for all three of us, at least, I'm not going to speak for all three of us, but I think it's an important thing to definitely be on the alignment of, we all carry, I think, a trait of, either consistent hard work or a sense of seeking success, but also we have our identity entrusted into the Lord. And so there's so many good things that we're doing with our life that we're trying so hard to accomplish and get done. And so I think without that, like, there's no failure there because we truly trust that God will provide some sense of value in that. Now, for any other person that might not have that same trait or that value of consistent hard work or seeking success, but just to get by to survive another day, I think for them is, when you're by yourself at the end of the day, can you actually just sit in your own presence and say, wow, I've gotten through it, and can you say thank you to yourself, like,
Yeah.
thank you X person for getting through that day.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything that I think is worth thinking about, is it's probably going to be how each single day you've lived, and is that something that you can be, in complete gratitude for? Did you take maybe all the advantages or not? I mean, you might not be entirely grateful, but I'm sure there can be at least one thing that you're grateful for within that day. Whether that was, I got a smile walking across the subway, or someone paid for my groceries, or something even smaller than that. Like, my mom gave me a piece of gum because my breath stank or something. It's like these little things that you don't think about, but then when you're all by yourself at the end of the day and you reflect, or you just think about it, or if you took the time to reflect and you ask yourself, what is one thing I'm grateful for? It's like, man, there was wind today walking to class because it was hot, and I appreciate that. And you think, wow, something as small as that, or something as grand as this, I'm grateful for. Then ultimately, I think it gets back to what you're speaking on, the essence of that, is when you're looking back, is that something you can appreciate, or something that you're satisfied owning up to?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think identity, that's worth thinking about for sure.
The owning up to is kind of the thing that struck me, because I think whether we like it or not, like, we are part of part of the narrative of our lives.
Right.
You know, like there is a wind blowing behind us, but we make the decisions, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our identity is in the decisions we make, right? And one of those decisions, as you pointed, is how do we look at our life, right? We could look at it with despair and, you know, groveling, like just, oh, life sucks and everything's awful,
Right.
you know? That's a decision you can make.
Mhm.
And your identity can be, wow, you're like a Scrooge, you know? Like
Yeah.
Scrooge lived in a realm where everything was actually good, but his perspective on life was what made his life sour.
Mhm.
It defined who he was. That's why it's called a Scrooge, because
Mhm.
you're like, you just hate everything, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, there's also something said about like little Tim, who like had nothing, but his perspective on life was everything.
Yeah.
And that defined who he was. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like you have the decision to be one or the other.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
choose Tim.
Yeah.
Don't choose Scrooge.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the things I want to leave the audience with is a phrase by Carl Jung.
Mm.
who
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
He says the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I think
Wow.
that very much complements what you're saying, right? It is the gift of our life to be pursuing identity.
Yeah.
You know, that's the gift.
I think we're in constant pursuit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the whole lifetime.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whether that life is short or that life is long. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
the pursuit.
Here's a fun question to end on.
Yeah.
How should I phrase this? What is an advice you would tell your younger self
Ooh.
in regards to trying to figure out who you were truly meant to be?
Ooh.
Wait, could you repeat that
No,
question?
I-
That was really good.
Okay. What advice would you give your younger self in regards to who you truly are meant to be?
Like the pursuit. You know?
Like someone struggling in terms of their identity.
Yeah.
They don't know what they want. Maybe they're stuck. Maybe they went into college for a certain major. I have so many friends that are in this situation and they can't find a job. And they're back home, they're living with their parents. There's no foreseeable light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Where does your identity lie?
I think for me, like, I went through that, like, post-college crisis when I was like pursuing education. Not that people who are pursuing education are not doing the right thing, but I definitely had a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And I've spent the last such and such period of time pursuing this thing that I thought I wanted to do. Right?
It wasn't what I was looking for.
Looking for. Ah, you know.
Catchphrase.
And I think the outcome of that's gonna be the title of this video. But I think the outcome of that experience, which is the advice I would give, is it's okay to be proud of who you are right now. You know.
Wow. That's a lot in a very little amount of words.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I think that saying that alone, like to myself, like that self-love and self-care was enough to carry me through that dip. Because I was like, you know what? I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what direction I'm going, but I'm happy I've done and lived the life I have so far.
Right.
You
That's
know?
good.
And there's no shame. There's something to be proud of merely in that fact alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
For some reason, this question, thank you so much, Josh,
Yeah,
for sharing, by
dude,
the way.
thank you both too.
Bombs.
It's like, this question is just, it's really hard for me.
This is a good question.
It's not something I can easily say, but if there was something that I could definitely pull through, it's influenced by what you were saying today, Anthony,
Okay.
of the past. And I'm a big person, like, I think that's why I really like Doctor Strange, is because he's just focused around time, you know. Time portal, you can go back, you know, imagine you could change anything. But
What are you gonna mess the timeline up though?
Yeah. Right,
What's the
okay.
timeline
See, understanding like how that can be a potential is just
Affect
such an
the
interesting
multiverse.
concept. But I would say it's like we have to understand that you can't change our past, but you can change your present, which will impact your future.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, period. I could end it there.
Period.
You know, right? Like that.
Put a pin in it.
Just put a
Pin in
pin in it.
I like that.
You know, I think
yeah.
that's where I would leave that.
Yeah, I'll leave off on this last anecdote that I actually heard from my pastor this past Sunday. And he was talking about this analogy of ships and how back then sailors would carry their compass. That's how they would get around. That's how they would navigate where they're going. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this. But after some time, old compasses get out of sync because there's all this traveling. It happens, old things, they don't always work the way they should be. And so what sailors do is that they'll go to what they call a still harbor. And in these still harbors, they spend a few days there. They go in, and this is where the water's still. There's nothing moving. There's no wind. And that's how the compass recalibrates. And then they go back out there and sail and do whatever they need to do. Right? Like, how often do we forget, or how often do we spend time like recalibrating our compass? And how often are we just going about life with a compass that isn't calibrated towards the true north, towards like what we're actually after? And I think that's the important lesson in terms of takeaway, or also the advice that I think I would give my younger self, is to spend enough, or I guess I would say more time in those still harbors of life, to make time to go to those still harbors of life. Because it's fun to go from one place to the next, one adventure to the next. But there has to be a time, there is going to be a time when your compass will be out of sync. And you need to recalibrate to the true north. And what that means is going, whatever it looks like for you, camping or escaping or retreat, and just spending some time like soul searching, spending some time figuring out like what it is in life that you're after. What is it that you want to do? What is it that is important to your identity that you're not willing to compromise? I think that's something that I wish I knew as I was a younger person.
As a youngin.
As a youngin.
I was just thinking that too.
Wow.
You want to close us off, Josh?
Yeah, Albert.
Sweet.
Gracious God, thank you for just a day that we can just ponder on these great thoughts about identity. Just thank you that we have you, Lord, that you can be such a good God, that we can place our identity in, that we can define ourselves by as children of God. Just thank you for these two wonderful men of God that we can just continue to engage in these conversations with. Pray for anyone who's listening to this who maybe feels like their compass is not working right now and they feel like there's a lack of direction. I just pray that you would just give them discernment and peace about where they are, and just continue to be with them throughout the rest of their journey, whatever that looks like, Lord. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this day. In your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Wow, we are well on our way through season 2. If you like the video, comment, subscribe. It really does help us grow the channel. It's been good. It's the good life, your practical guide to adulting. We'll see you guys in the next one.